Hi, everybody. You're very welcome. I've just launched our poll and I see a few of you have already completed it. So we'll give the other people who are there just a little second to give their responses. Really interesting so far what's coming up in the poll. This is our first time actually to launch this poll, primarily because, as you all know, now is the time when people are getting back in front of people. And I suppose that question wouldn't have maybe been as relevant the last time that we ran a webinar. So we've just one or two last people to vote. And okay, let me end. If you haven't voted, do it really quickly. Okay, so I'm going to end and I'm going to share the results with you. So you can see there that 53% of you would prefer in person, 18% of you virtually, and then 29, almost 30% of you really have no preference. So it's just interesting. I suppose no matter whether you prefer presenting virtually or not, for many of us here today, the virtual world is going to be a part of what we do anyway, whether that's in a hybrid situation or on days when we're in the office or on other days when we're working from home. So no matter whether you're presenting extensively virtually, only occasionally virtually, what we do here today is going to be relevant for you. So just in terms of, you might be wondering why we chose this particular topic for today's webinar. There's a number of reasons. Firstly, it was one of our, probably actually the most popular webinar of last year. The other thing then is when people come into our programs, we'll always questionnaire them either via video or via document on what are some of their biggest challenges, particularly presenting virtually. And it comes up again and again and again. It's just much more difficult to connect and engage with people virtually than it is when we're in a room with them face to face. So that's why we developed this particular webinar. And on your screen, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get stuck in, and we will get stuck in as quickly as possible. You'll notice you should see a little chat box. So in the chat box, that is where you can chat to me. So at times I might ask you a question. So for example, if you would like to pop in the chat where you are in the world right now or how you're feeling today right now, that'd be really nice. So the chat is when maybe I ask you something and you're responding to me. And the other button that you should also see is the Q&A, and that is where you have questions that you would like to ask me. Sorry, it's just a bit slow to get going. So Kevin, you're in Ontario. Kevin, we love Kevin. Kevin's one of our biggest fans, we'd like to think. Kevin always has great questions. So Kevin, no pressure there today to ask some good questions. And I know we've people from the UK and we've also people from all across Ireland. So if you're outside of Ireland and outside of the UK, we'd love to know where you are today. So we do love questions. I will stop every so often for questions. And my colleague, Sharon, who is there quietly in the background, will pass your questions through to me. So Sharon, do you want to, just as I pop up a little, the next slide here, do you want to just say a quick hello?
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar.
I hope so too, Sharon. So Sharon is one of the team here, obviously. She's looks after all the operational end of things. There's, by the way, just a list of some of the clients that we work with. We also have Debbie, who works in the background in terms of everything financial. So for facilitators, we are a small team, but we punch well. There are three of us, all of us, myself, Barbara, and Aideen and Majella. All of us have at least one training qualification. We also all have at least 15, I have a bit more than 15, but we'll say 15 years in business. And we all have at least 12 to 13 years experience in the learning and development end of things. So we're highly, highly experienced. So let's get stuck in. Can I ask you in the chat, now not the Q&A, into the chat, if you know who either of these are, just pop in the name. These two people did TED Talks in September 2009. At the time, they were both virtually unknown and their topics were very, very similar. Yet, the person on the left who is It is Simon Sinek. Yeah, I see a few of you there saying it is. Simon Sinek on the left, his TED Talk, the last time I looked at it, had over 53 million views. The lady on the right is Fields Wicker Mirren. I just found her name very difficult to pronounce. She had over 1 million views. Now, you might be wondering, why? What was the difference? Why did one get so many more views than the other? Well, research done by a company in Portland, Oregon, might give us a little bit of insight into why there is such a discrepancy between the number of views. They got 760 people to look at various TED Talks and look at the ones that had really, really high views and ones that had really, really low views and try and figure out the difference. They found that Simon Sinek had 600 gestures in his 18-minute TED Talk. Now, that's about one gesture every 6 seconds. Fields, on the other hand, was quite static. And if you watch her talk, and you can even see from the picture there, she tended just to, gesture just with one hand. So this company that did the research came up with the term jazz hands rock. And it's probably not a term we'd use here in Ireland, but I think it's important to keep in mind. So using your hands in the virtual world really, really, really can help to add impact. And it's interesting, I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second. Quite a number of people will say to me, oh, I hate the virtual world. You can't use any body language. Of course you can. You can still gesture. Probably the biggest problem is that people end up just resting on their elbows or resting on their forearms when they're speaking. And when you do either of them, you're not likely to gesture at all. So I would suggest that regardless of your camera setup and whether people can see your gestures or not, just keeping your forearms off the table is going to bring a bit more energy. And you know what? It might even encourage you to gesture. So remember, point number 1, jazz hands rock. For the second tip I want to give you today, I want to take you back to June 2012, where I was in a meeting room in Sandyford, which is just about 10 kilometers from where our office is here in Dún Laoghaire. And there was a guy, we call him John, and John was getting up to speak. And the MC said, so John is going to speak to us now for 7 minutes. Now, I don't know about you, but 7 minutes is, you'd expect 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So anyway, I did what I often do in those circumstances. I took out my notebook and I just jotted down the current time. Within 30 seconds, I knew John was never going to finish within the 7 minutes. He rambled, waffled. He just didn't kind of faffed around before getting stuck in. About 5 minutes in, he got stuck in. But bear in mind, he only had a total of 7 minutes. So 7 minutes went by, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 17 minutes later, he says, well, I must be close to my 7 minutes now, so I'll take any questions. He had absolutely no clue in terms of where he was timing-wise. And apart from practicing out loud and knowing where he would be at particular points, one of the things that he could have done that would have been really, really helpful was to have prepared how he was going to open and how he was going to close. I'm not a fan of suggesting that you learn your opening by heart. And by the way, you'll see a picture here of a nice warm bowl of soup. I don't know what it's like where you are today, but it's cold here in Dún Laoghaire. But it's like a starter to a meal. If you go into a restaurant, you had a really nice starter. Everything is started on a good foot. So with your presentation, know how you're going to start, because that will get you straight in. Whether you're going to start with a story, a fascinating fact, or whether you're presenting to senior execs and you're literally straight in summarizing, this is what I'm here for, and this is what I'm going to cover to get to that particular point. But know exactly how you're going to start, and then know how you're going to finish. Now, you might plan your finish, and you might have to tweak or flex based on what's happened during your presentation. That's totally fine, but make sure that you have a point to come back to. So when you do that, you will avoid any faff or fizzle. Okay, next thing. Wouldn't it just be fantastic? You know, I know we have people here today from IT services, and maybe they might know somebody who can come up with something. I know virtual reality is as close as we can get, but if there was something that you could put your hand right through the screen and make that connection with your audience. But so far, we can't actually do that. Actually, interestingly, even face-to-face. So we've begun doing some face-to-face training again. And I was with the group yesterday, and it's funny because you go into the room and you don't know whether to go. Will you start, going like that? Do I go this? Do I go this? Do I just nod at them? But in the virtual world, it's you can't really do that. But one of the ways that you can really connect and engage virtually is through looking directly at the camera. So you can see in the picture here, we've got somebody who's just even got a little phone and it's up on the stand, but it's nicely positioned at eye level. Now, I don't know about yourselves, but certainly early on in lockdown, we found ourselves a lot of the time looking maybe up people's noses or, at the top of their heads. I think most people have it fairly spot on now in terms of having the camera directly at eye level. But when you look into the camera, each person who's listening to you feels like you're really looking at them. If you find it difficult to look in the camera, maybe consider just putting a little photograph of a pet or a place or something just immediately behind your camera that makes you feel good. When you're looking and locking on that lens, it's often useful if you use a person's name. So for example, if I say, Susan, yeah, well done, Susan, that was actually Simon Sinek. Susan, you probably feel that I am only speaking to you, which I am. But everybody else who's on the call also feels the eye contact as well. So looking and locking onto the lens is one way that is really going to help you to connect with your audience. Now, sometimes people will say to me, yeah, but Barbara, if I'm looking into the camera, I can't see their reactions. So I have two responses on that one. Number one is this: you look to the camera when you're speaking to them, and then when you're checking in for understanding, just have a glance down saying, is this resonating? Questions on what I've covered so far, and make it clear that they know that you're looking at them. And then when you're speaking to them, you speak directly through the camera. The other thing that might be useful is this. So this is called a plexicam. So if any of you've heard of this, just pop a yes into the chat there. I think this is a fantastic invention. So the idea being, it sits onto your screen. You can attach your camera onto here, and it means then that your camera can sit slap bang in the middle of your screen, which is brilliant. So you can be looking at people that are kind of in your circumference vision, or better still, if you're one-to-one with somebody, you can be looking into their eyes and they're just, fractions away from where your camera is on the screen. And, there's not many products. Actually, in 22 years of training and presentations, I've never had an affiliate link. I do have an affiliate link for that gadget because I think it is fantastic. Sharon, I know you bought one recently yourself.
I did indeed. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's also great for auto cues. Sharon's going to pop the affiliate link in the chat there. Even if you don't purchase it through the affiliate link, go and have a look at the website and see what it does. It's just super duper. And it really does help you to much better connect with your audience through your camera. Okay, Sharon, just before I go on, is there any questions coming in yet at all?
Just one second. Yeah, we've had a question in from Louise. She wants to know about eye contact when you're presenting to a hybrid audience.
Okay, yeah, and I suppose that's something that more and more, as we have this hybrid working, people will find themselves in. I have done a little bit of hybrid presenting myself, and one of the things that I would strongly recommend that you do is to make sure that, because obviously your inclination is to look at people in the room because you can feel that connection more, but make sure that you do make eye contact with the camera for those who are tuning in or joining you virtually. So for example, if you've got a meeting and 5 people are in the room and 5 are virtual, I would be suggesting that 50% of the time you should be looking to the camera for those who are tuning in remotely. And again, don't be afraid to use their names to make them feel part of the conversation. So for example, I know we've people here today from pharma, from academic, we're from hospitality, from aviation, both from airlines and for services to airlines. And, you know, at a particular point, and there is another group which I will refer to later on, at a particular point, but just even by calling out a person's name and referring to them, particularly if they're not in the room, really can make them feel that they're more connected with those who are actually physically present. Thanks for that, Louise. Okay. So in the chat, so I'm getting you to work now today, but in the chat, can you pop in what you feel these two people have in common? So what do the two people here have in common? On one of the programs, somebody said that they thought they both had eyelash extensions. Maybe one of them has, but I'm not too sure if the person on the left actually has. Okay, so let's see. They're smiling. Yeah, they are smiling, Elaine. Francis, you're spot on there. And actually, smiling is one of the points that we're going to cover today, but I would suggest that you do smile. And not smile all the time because it's ridiculous. Smile where it's appropriate, maybe at the beginning of your call or your meeting, at the end, and anywhere else that it's relevant. But just be really mindful of your default face. And funny enough, I was on LinkedIn this morning and somebody had screenshotted a panel event that they were at. And there was 5 people on the panel and one of them looked like he just sucked a sour lemon. Now, I'm sure that wasn't what he was feeling, but just be very mindful because particularly in this virtual world, a lot of time, all people have is this little square. So your facials become much, much more visible. Okay, so let's see, other than smiling. Yeah, now that we're looking at the camera, you're right, Dara, there. The focus position, James, yeah, not really spot on, which is true. And there's a number of reasons, but the key reason why I popped them up is that they are both showing their Duchenne markers. You're probably wondering, what on earth is a Duchenne marker? I'm going to tell you. The Duchenne markers are, you see those little, now you might call them wrinkles, by the way, I've got lots of Duchenne markers, but these are when the emotion is being shown genuinely, it goes to your eyes. So you know when somebody smiles and just go, you know it's fake. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because people eye with emotion and they rationalize it, you know, they justify it with the logical part of the brain. But well, you are really, when you're communicating, you're selling your thoughts, your ideas. So don't be afraid to let your emotion, your passion show when you're communicating. It just makes people, you come across more genuine or authentic or whatever word you prefer to use. But people will, yeah, they'll just warm to you better. Now, having said all that, there are times on a virtual call where we may need to be a little bit, as I call it, Botox face. You know, like sometimes somebody says something and you think, what? But you don't want to show it. So sometimes you need to be just mindful of keeping that poker face. Not always, but there are times. On the other hand, actually, I was talking to somebody recently who was in a meeting and the meeting was about budgets. And the person who was talking about the budgets threw out a figure. And obviously the person who I knew who was at the meeting said they just went, yeah, way off with a visual. And the person who was speaking said, well, I can tell by Pat's reaction there, I'm obviously way off the mark. So your visuals, be very, very mindful of them. But the key thing is let the emotion through and show your Duchenne markers. Okay, I know I have a lot of photographs today. I don't normally have so many, but I don't know, just for whatever reason, in this particular webinar, we have a lot of them. In the chat, again, 2 things. If you know who this person is, I'd love you to put in her name. And then secondly, what you associate her with. So what do you associate this person with? And whether you know her name or not, if you were to hear her speaking, you'll notice she's got quite a deep resonance to her. I'm just turning something off there. She's got quite a deep resonance. So people, Jane Fonda, Vietnam, yeah, aerobics, Grace and Frankie. Gosh, Orla, you have the whole shebang going from right back to the 80s when she did her Keep Fit classes, her videos, right up to the current time. Jane Fonda exercise, Grace and Frankie, yeah. nowadays she's an activist, and she refers, that would be her main, what would you call it, that she would associate with herself. Her main area would be her activism. So she's got a very deep resonance to her voice. And the reason I'm saying that is that as females, and don't worry, any males in the call, I'll come to you in a second. Sometimes when we're a little bit nervous, we can go to a higher pitch, and it doesn't really do us justice. So, for example, Maggie Thatcher, if you ever Google Maggie Thatcher pre-voice coaching. So she spoke in quite a high, light voice, and it was felt that her voice wouldn't carry weight. So she went to a voice coach in the UK called Stuart Pearce, and he helped her to tap into that deeper resonance. Now, I'm not suggesting that all the females suddenly start talking in really deep voices, but I'm just saying to be mindful of when you need to be serious, when you need to have that certain level of gravitas, authority, go to the deeper resonance. For our any of our males who are with us here today, really such fascinating research around this. Duke University looked at 792 male CEOs. They found the ones that had the deeper resonance tended to earn $187,000 a year more than the ones who spoke at higher pitches. They also led longer teams and tend to be longer in the roles. UCLA, an acoustic scientist called Rosario Signorello, did some research on charisma, and in short, what he found was that those who used the full vocal range were deemed to be more charismatic. So you should be looking up to your higher tones, and when you want to be taken really seriously, go to your deeper tones. But in order to keep people engaged, you need to be kind of going a bit high and low, because if you're monotone, monopace, monopitch, mono everything, people are going to tune out. So make sure that you use your full vocal range. Okay, question for you, another one here. All right. Question I want to ask you. Do you think, here's a quote from a book by a guy called Andy Bounds. The book is called The Jelly Effect, How to Make Your Message Stick. It's really good. I recommend it. He says, most people talk too much of the time. So if you agree, click yes. If you disagree, click no. Most people talk too much of the time. And again, recently I was working with the group, and I had one particular person, actually a couple of them, saying they struggle with time management. They've so much to say and trying to squish it all in. But the problem is, if you're trying to get everything in, then you end up speaking very, very fast and your message doesn't land and you're in a bit of bother. So, okay. All right. Okay. Let me just share the results. They're fairly resounding. And to be honest, anytime we've launched that poll, we get similar results. We do. So what can you do about that? If you've got too much content, you're going to rush. As I said, people aren't going to be, they're not going to be able to connect and engage. But if you chop your content, okay, my battery is low. Give me 2 ticks while I just jump down and plug it in here. Okay.
I've just put the name of the book in the chat for everybody as well, so you can see what it's called.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. Okay. Okay, this is the point where I realize I've left my charger at home. Hopefully I'll have enough for the next 5 minutes, which I think will. Okay, so chop your content. And for our finance friends here today, they might be able to relate to this, or maybe not. We had an accountant recently who was saying that when he does a monthly update on the figures, he said, I'm actually bored myself. There's so much in it. So what we suggested was, look, have everything at a high level, keep the detail in hidden slides, and ask, do you want me to go into the extra detail? Sometimes we're giving people more than they need. Or if it's appropriate, consider sending a pre-read. It can be helpful for everybody. So remember, more is less. Now you're probably used to the statement, less is more, but we like to think more is less. That's our little strap line here. The more you talk, the less they're going to remember. The more you're trying to squeeze in, the less captivation, because you're just in such a hurry that you can't do anything with the words. So there are 6 pointers so far. We have 1 point left. You will on Friday get a follow-up email. It'll have a link to a webinar area of our website, which will have links to various other useful resources. It will have slides, and it will also have this recording for you. So just before we go to our last point, I want to do one little sneaky quick plug for the kind of programs that we have. So we do one-to-one coaching, both virtual and face-to-face. Our one-day programs, when we deliver them virtually now, we're delivering them in 2 half-day modules. We have tailored webinars, which have been really, really popular because you can have anything from 1 hour to 2 hours. And our 2-day programs, which we deliver live, and also we deliver them virtually in 4 half-day modules. We do have an open program coming up on Wednesday and Thursday, the 23rd and 24th of March. Wouldn't that be a nice St. Patrick's Day present for somebody you love? Okay, that's the plug. Final point. Bullets kill, even in PowerPoint. Steve Jobs never, ever, ever used not even one bullet. You should consider in your virtual particular presentations to put in more pictures. So you can get free pictures from any of these places. Wherever possible, replace words with a picture. You might even like to use your own ones. So this is my grandnephew Kyle in the Phoenix Park, the largest public park in Europe, gathering leaves and just throwing them up in the air. And like I've used that slide in various guises, one of them being where you're showing your emotion and your facial expressions. But look at your own photographs. Could you use some of them just to add some interest? Yeah, I'm not going to go back and show the links now because you're going to get the slides because I'm a little bit tight on time and I do want to finish on time. But maybe, yeah, you'll get the slides, I promise you, on Friday, it's Wednesday, and the links will be there. Okay, you might even consider paying for slides. So on occasion, this is a slide that I used in my TEDx talk a number of years ago about the different types of intelligence. So you might decide for a significant presentation, you might outsource and pay somebody to do slides. And if you want some references, we can give you people that we often use ourselves. We do have an account with Shutterstock where we can get top quality images. But the thing I would suggest to you is you need to put a bit more investment into your slides because they are a bit more of the presentation than they would be in the face-to-face world. Because if you think of it now, you're just seeing me as a tiny picture and it's the slide that is the main thing. Oh, Sharon, you're so good. Thank you for popping in those links. All right, brilliant. So just to say that when we finish here, when I exit the webinar, you're going to automatically be brought to a SurveyMonkey form. We do love to get your feedback. Just 3 teeny weeny short questions. Just before I finish and before I check for any last questions, if you'd like to pop into the chat, what's one thing that you're definitely going to take from what we've covered here today? So what's one thing just before we finish up? The jazz hands, the tone, yeah, no more bullet points. Hooray, looking at the camera, more is less. Brilliant. So here's the thing, no matter, ideally we'd love you to use all 7 of them, not realistic. The next time that you get onto a virtual call, whether it's a phone call or a meeting, see if you can make one small change, because when you do, you are much more likely to captivate and connect. Thanks for coming along. Have a great day, and you can look forward to receiving your links on Friday.